The Locked On Podcast Network presents the Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
The Toronto Blue Jays backs were against the wall before coming into Game 3 as they get punched in the mouth in the first 2 games. But Game 3 comes around 13-4. This team punches right back.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast.
That is the response game that we've talked about all season. This team gets hit and they get back up and throw a few themselves. This is a masterclass from the Toronto Blue Jays offense, something that was completely missing from Game 1 and 2 from this offense. And to be honest with you, Carter, I got to give you some props. You're the guy all season that's been sitting here and saying that every time this team, throws a wrench into what you believe, they come back out of the depths of hell and show you why, you should never lose faith in this ball club. It was absolutely unbelievable. We're going to talk the offense. We're going to talk the pitching. We're going to talk Game 4, how this all tees up for the Toronto Blue Jays possibly to have some success here, right? You can never be too out on this team because, man, they can have a game like this that just drags all of Canada right back to them. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Iwasco, Carter First 2 as well, and our main one at Locked On Jays. Also, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And if you're new here to YouTube, hit the subscribe button. You guys have been killing it lately. The comments, the likes, the subscriptions, the text messages or DMs we've received across all the apps. You guys are unbelievable. And for all of you that stuck with this team all season long up to this point, good on you. Still much more baseball to come with this group. Carter, my man, initial reactions, thoughts, feelings. What do you got for us?
Well, that was a little bit better than the first 2 games, eh? Just a little bit. All of a sudden, again, just the script completely flips upside down. And it's not even credit to me. It's just credit to the Toronto Blue Jays because they've done it time and time again, every single instance that they've had the opportunity to do it. And this time was probably the easiest time to be out on the Toronto Blue Jays. Like we said, with the rest that the Seattle Mariners pitching staff had, the pitching matchups that we had, just the momentum that you thought you might have going from a New York Yankees series in the Seattle Mariners series, everything you thought and you might know about the Toronto Blue Jays seemed to be thrown out the window in those first 2 games. So this would have been the opportunity to kind of take the exit, the perimeter exit, get off your right side, get out of the Toronto Blue Jays, get off the bandwagon. But hey, they bring you right back in once again, and it's everybody. We talk about this team being one of the closest dugouts of all time. There might be something to say about that, which is getting a little bit ridiculous because we see nobody hit, and then we see everybody hit. Literally everybody on this roster, once again, showed up, and it's crazy because either they all show up or they don't show up. Predominantly this year, they have shown up, but it really sucks when they do not show up. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. right at the forefront of it. Alejandro Kirk adding to it, hitting a home run. George Springer home run. Andres Jimenez debatably saving the season, the most unlikely source of all time. So you just got to carry on this momentum. It's all fun and games right now. You win 1 game, but you're still down 2-1 in the series. If you lose Game 4, you're down 3-1. Honestly, not that much game. So now, as I said, must-win game in Game 3. That kind of just transfers over to Game 4 now. I would say with Max Scherzer on the mound, maybe not the guy that you want in that situation, but now all the must-win accolades, that's the word I'm looking for, 3rd time's a charm, accolades that were going into the 3rd game are never transferred over to that 4th game. And now I think the 4th game is just as much as a must-win as that 3rd game was.
Carter, I guess let's start in that first inning. Let's start right up from the jump with Shane Bieber. Didn't look good in that first inning. There was hanging pitches. Things weren't breaking. He was missing his spots, and he got banged up for it. And you looked over at me, and you're like, oh, God. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I don't know what to say. But then this team punches back. Andres Jimenez, you said it, possible season saver home run just from the most unlikely source. A guy that, gets up to the plate and we're like, well, there goes that inning. But no, instead he sends a moon ball out of here and propels this Blue Jays team to success. But the way that Shane Bieber was able to continue through this game after that first inning and the confidence of John Schneider to put him back out there for the 6th inning, to me, was a little bit of a, hey, lesson learned. We're up by a ton of runs. Let's use this guy. Let's not throw this to the bullpen. and waste arms. Let's give the guys who we need some rest here because we can. We have that opportunity and that ability. How good was Shane Bieber tonight outside of that first inning?
I was terrified in the first inning. I saw that pitch to Julio Rodriguez. I saw him hanging sliders, hanging curveballs. The changeup didn't really look like it was moving a ton. I think I told you, I think I just said the words. I said it was over. I'm pretty sure I said that at that time. I know a lot of other Blue Jays fans probably felt the same way, because if we would have saw that Shane Bieber, the first inning Shane Bieber pitched that entire game, that's the feelings that I was having when he pitched against the New York Yankees. He was getting hard hit everywhere. The command wasn't really on. And I was not confident in first inning Shane Bieber. I don't know what he did. Maybe it's the smelling salts. I don't know what he got on in that dugout. But when he came out for that second inning, really had a bounce back inning there. The third inning, they score runs. Shane Bieber comes back out. You get that Andres Gimenez home run. Very easy to be able to give that back and kind of ruin the momentum with the Seattle Mariners fan base being, very rowdy, very loud, obviously, with that start. Shane Bieber just locks in, starts racking up the whiffs. The slider looked very good. We're starting to use the curveball earlier on in counts as well. The fastball looked relatively good, I'd say, the entire game. Although I didn't love the pitch to Julio Rodriguez. It's more so of a sequencing thing. But again, that's just a nice swing by Julio Rodriguez. They're a good team in the Seattle Mariners too. But yeah, credit to a veteran. Credit to bounce back in that first inning, where I'm sure I wasn't the only one that was very worried about what we were seeing from Shane Bieber in that first inning. Exactly what you needed. You need a guy to go out there, especially with the way the first two games went, kind of take control, go into a hostile environment, and really assert your dominance and get that much-needed win that the Toronto Blue Jays needed.
Carter, another guy that me and you have talked a ton about, and it has become a fan favorite, that's Ernie Clement. You really got to give him all the credit in the world for being able to come out and sort of be that spark plug, right? That double down the left field line, really changed the game, right? Yes, it doesn't happen if Andres Gimenez doesn't hit that home run and spark this team again. But it all starts with Ernie Clement. The way he's been able to do this all season in big moments and not big moments, just everywhere, all the time. Ernie Clement has been that guy who you can rely on. And that's why he's become an everyday player for this team, because he's just very reliable. And then obviously you didn't know that you were going to get the Andres Gimenez home run. That nobody in the world.
I don't think anyone could have told you that ever.
So you got to really give props to Ernie for at least getting the ball rolling for this team and maybe giving them a little bit of a spark. Carter, and I know he's your guy, right? You've been on him for a while now. Just what has Ernie Clement really meant to this club, and especially for Game 3 here?
All season long, you've seen how meaningful the reps are with Ernie Clement, whether at second base, third base. You could probably throw him in the outfield like he used to play. And earlier in his career, he'd probably be successful at that. So just the utility aspect, being able to throw him anywhere in the infield defensively, and not just being able to put him there, him excelling at defense, him providing you one of the best defensive gloves in all of baseball. And then with the bat, we've seen as well, especially against left-handed pitchers, but he can do it against righties, which we've seen throughout this series as well. Him being dominant, him being able to put the bat on the ball, really just being a contact specialist. You're never seeing Ernie strike out. And you see some wacky swings from him, but it usually ends up with the ball going into the outfield and falling. I bet you Ernie Clement is one of those guys that pitchers see at the plate and they get frustrated. They know that this guy might not have the greatest swing technical-wise, and he might, kind of throw the hands at the ball, but a lot of the time it is going to work out for him. But in Game 3 here, specifically in this moment, you see what happens in that first inning. You go 1-2-3. For me, it was the worst case scenario. 1-2-3 inning, not really any life from your offense at all. And then what does Shane Bieber do? He gives up a moon ball. The crowd is very involved in the game, and those are my 2 points. Score early and don't get the crowd involved. What do they do in the first inning? They check both of those off the checklist, and that's why I was not very excited to watch the rest of this game. But Ernie Clement kind of getting that spark back, where it would have been easy to kind of roll over and really let the Seattle crowd take over that baseball game. He hammers one down the line. Again, Andres Gimenez definitely helped things out here. Did not have that on my bingo card. What a swing from Gimenez. Obviously, that helps if he's on first base, third base. Doesn't matter when Andres Gimenez is going to do that. But just the value of having, honestly, both of those guys in the middle, especially defensively, when you talk about just them turning double plays in the middle of the infield, it's very special to watch. But Ernie Clement at least gives you some more upside offensively, and it has been debatably the best hitter for the Toronto Blue Jays ball club in the postseason. Probably still give it to Vladdy, but he's definitely in that conversation.
And you know what? You talked about a guy, throwing his hands at the ball. Alejandro Kirk pokes one out of here. And there's a lot more we want to get to yet. Something that I talked about as a key to the game, I want to touch on that at the beginning of segment 2 here, because I think it is the most important part of this ball club and where they can have success. And that's what we saw tonight. We'll talk about that when we come back, as well as some ratings wise, because the Canadian fans are really showing up and showing out for this Toronto Blue Jays team. We'll talk about all that. But Carter, Alejandro Kirk it seems like when a couple guys are going, this team just absolutely is a buzzsaw. And that is Alejandro Kirk, Dalton Varsho, and of course, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. When those three guys are going, it's the heart of the order. It's the heart of this lineup. They're the guys that you want to be doing damage. And when they are, and they're on their game, this is the kind of game that can happen for the Toronto Blue Jays. I know, big shocker, right? Your three guys in the middle of your order doing well. The team does well. Shocker, but it's important.
Well, it absolutely is. That's one stat that I brought up on the last podcast is I brought up the 3, 4, 5 hitters. That doesn't include Dalton Varsho in this scenario, but that's Vladdy and Alejandro Kirk. Just what they did in the first 2 games of the series. 1 for 20 was your 3, 4, 5 hitters throughout the first 2 games. Who would have thought you were not going to score runs and you were not going to produce offense when your 3, 4, and 5 hitters were not doing literally anything offensively? And look at this. Now you score 13 runs. Who's right in the middle of it? Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Alejandro Kirk. These are their stat lines combined tonight. They are 6 for 8, 2 home runs, 2 doubles, 4 RBIs, 2 walks. It's right in front of our faces. If these guys hit, with Dalton Varsho obviously in there as well. If you have these 3 guys hitting, that's easily the difference of you scoring runs and probably winning that baseball game, or you putting up a dud, playing that goose egg and putting up that 0 and probably losing that baseball game. So yeah, it might sound like the most obvious thing of all time, but we've seen it right in front of our faces. If these guys in the middle of your order in any baseball team, obviously, if they're not hitting, you're probably not going to win the game. If these guys are hitting, if these guys show up, the Toronto Blue Jays are going to win more games than they lose.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
Russell Westbrook is a Sacramento King, and I'm seeing one question above anything else. Why?
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast.
Russell Westbrook, that's who we're here to talk about. Finally, it happened. We heard rumors and conversations and talk all summer long. Russell Westbrook to the Kings. It was the Kings. It was Russell Westbrook. It was this partnership, this agreement. It seemed like it was going to happen. And there was all of this delay, and the money was unsure because there's not a lot of money available. And how much could they give Russ? And they couldn't free up more money than they were able to this summer. They couldn't move Malik or Devin Carter or the Jonathan Kuminga situation. There was all this stuff in the way of the Kings and Russell Westbrook finally agreeing to a contract, coming together. And we finally got to a point where the Kuminga situation resolved itself. The Warriors and Kuminga were able to work out their deal, so the Kings fell out of that. And we got all the way to October 15th with the season starting less than a week from now. For the Kings, the season starts a week from tonight, but the NBA season begins less than a week from now. And here is Russell Westbrook, still not on the team, looking around going, yo, do I have to go international to play? Apparently he had an offer of around $10 million reportedly to go and play in China. So there's more money available for him to play internationally, but it sounds like he wasn't too keen on the idea of going and playing in China. There was always this interest in playing for the Sacramento Kings since the days even before training camp, free agency opened. We were talking about this here on Locked On Kings earlier this summer. So it appears maybe the fact that nobody else was calling in the NBA and it was either China or take the money that the Kings are able to offer, it appears that ran its course. And ultimately, according to reports, Russell Westbrook and the Kings have agreed to a deal today. Matt, why? How in the world does Russell make sense for the Sacramento Kings? Russell Westbrook now makes the Sacramento Kings the third oldest team in the NBA. Why are the Kings prioritizing Westbrook? Why would the Kings spend the money and the roster spot to bring Russell Westbrook here? It doesn't make sense. It just feels like more of throwing together a hodgepodge roster of names that were especially big 5+ years ago and hoping it works here in Sacramento. I understand those of you who feel that way. Hopefully this podcast today will make you feel a little bit better, or at the very least give you a little more of an understanding of why Russell Westbrook was enticing for the Sacramento Kings. Because you have to understand, there is an off-court identity part of the conversation, and there's an on-court basketball player part of the conversation. And I'm telling you, and this might already make you wrinkle your nose in disgust, the off-court identity part is what is most important here. That's why we're going to start with that. And again, you might be going, your instant reaction might be, if we're talking about off the court being more important than on the court, then I already know this isn't a good signing. Hear me out. Because we've talked about this a million times since Scott Perry's first press conference after he was hired as the Kings general manager at the start of the offseason. This season, first and foremost, is about establishing a new identity and a new culture in Sacramento. You're probably sick and tired of hearing me say it, but I'm going to continue to say it because that is what the reality is here in Sacramento. That does not mean that wins and losses aren't important. That does not mean that what happens with the team on the floor doesn't matter. Quite the opposite. The Kings on the court need to be established. We need to see a difference between now and end of this season with how this team plays. We need to be able to know very clearly how the Sacramento Kings play basketball, who the Kings are as a basketball team. Because going into game 1 of the season in a week, we know what they want to be, but we still don't know who they truly are. We still don't. And we probably won't know for weeks or maybe even months into the season. They are identifying or developing this identity that Doug Christie and Scott Perry have come together and agreed, like, this is how we're going to play. We're going to play up tempo. We're going to be a defense first. We're going to be a physical team, a get in your face team, a take no nonsense team. And a lot of those traits I just said fit Russell Westbrook perfectly. Russ is exactly the type of player to establish this identity in Sacramento. He's not the best player to establish this identity, but he's exactly the type of player. There's a difference. One thing I want to address right off the bat, because I've seen it a lot. I've been seeing it a lot since Russ became a conversation, and it's not true. Russell Westbrook is not a cancer to the Kings. He's not a cancer to a locker room. It is not true. I have talked to many people in organizations, those Locked On hosts or other media members who have covered Russell Westbrook from most recently in Denver to all the stops that he has bounced around. Russell Westbrook is not a cancer. It is consistent. Everybody's told me, no, Russ does not come into a situation and make it toxic and make it horrible. Russell Westbrook is not going to cause the Sacramento Kings to revert back to the cancerous awfulness of last season that they went through, the toxicity. It's not going to be because of Russell Westbrook. It's not like he's coming in to rough anything up in that sense. That's not true. I don't believe that. I've never had any indication to believe that. I think that narrative or that reputation is false and it's silly. But I understand how people get there because who Russell Westbrook is, he's a jerk. He's an a-hole. He's a guy who's going to speak his mind. There is a very significant difference between being that and being toxic. Draymond Green, as much as we do not like Draymond here in Sacramento for obvious reasons, Draymond Green is not toxic. He's an a-hole. He's a jerk that has been perfect for the Warriors for their entire dynasty. How many times over the years have we talked about the Kings need a dog? The Kings need someone who will light a fire. The Kings need someone who will get in somebody's face. Cue Russell Westbrook's music. And Russ is not just going to come in here to stand up for his teammates and get in the faces of opponents if they try anything silly. When the Houston Rockets come into town and try and do their pushing and shoving Ime Udoka ways, or Draymond Green comes to town and tries to get in somebody's face. Yeah, Russ is going to be the guy to get involved in that to an extent, of course. Hopefully Dennis Schroeder will too. But Russell Westbrook is also going to be the guy in the practice facility to, I don't know if he'd physically do this, but for lack of a better term, grab somebody by the collar, pull them in and go, you need to lock the F in. You need to buy in. I need more from you because you're going through the motions. Lock in. Go 110% because that's who Russell Westbrook is. Russ demands 100% effort because he has always played with 100% effort. We'll get to the on-the-court stuff and how that 100% effort can lead to erratic, crazy, chaotic on-court moments and mistakes that are going to happen 100%. There are going to be mistakes that Russell Westbrook makes when he suits up and plays for the Sacramento Kings, of course. And there are concerns about fit and like floor spacing stuff. All of that is true, and we will get to that. But the identity is what is most important. And Russell Westbrook, like Doug Christie, wants to punch first, not react to getting punched. Russ punches first. Russ will help set a standard here in Sacramento. Russ will hold his teammates to that standard that Doug Christie and Scott Perry are setting better than anybody else on this roster. He can do it way better than DeMar DeRozan, way better than Zach LaVine, way better than Domantas Sabonis. Russ is going to be the guy to hold people to that standard better. But he is also, in my opinion, like the perfect combo with DeMar. Not basketball-wise, but mentorship-wise, motivational-wise. DeMar DeRozan has already taught so many people in Sacramento about what it is to be a pro. DeMar DeRozan is a champion of mental health. He wrote a book about it, his life experiences. He's going to be a guy that's phenomenal for Neat Clifford or Keegan Murray or anybody to go to. And they already have gone through to work their way through the roller coaster of life in the NBA and expectations and pressures as an NBA player. DeMar is perfect for that. But DeMar DeRozan, while he can hold people accountable in his own way, DeMar DeRozan is not going to do what Russell Westbrook does. The Kings want to play with a fire. The Kings want to play with an intensity. The Kings want that fire and intensity to burn throughout all aspects of this organization with how they approach practice, how they approach film study, how they approach daily life as a Sacramento King. Russell Westbrook helps establish that and fits that. Russell Westbrook immediately becomes the best extension of Doug Christie in that locker room, on that practice floor, on the NBA floor that the Kings have. That is who Russell Westbrook is. That is what Russell Westbrook brings. And that is why Russell Westbrook has been on Scott Perry's radar since the beginning. Yes, there are basketball concerns, and we're going to get to those in just a second here. Will it work perfectly on the basketball floor? No, it won't. Is Russell Westbrook the difference between the Kings being a play-in team and a playoff team? No, he's not. But Russell Westbrook is the type of guy that can lay the foundation that the Kings can build upon in the years to come. Russell Westbrook is the guy to set the standard. So Neek, Keegan, Keon, Devin, all these young guys who are hopefully, many of them, hopefully part of Scott Perry's future, they understand it. They learn it. It becomes part of who they are. It becomes the standard. It becomes the expectation that Russ can then pass the torch to those guys to where they can hold the newcomers, the new trade additions, the new rookies, new draft picks of the future. They can hold them to that standard. We talk a lot about Heat culture and how Heat culture has been able to surpass the constraints of time and carry year after year, decade after decade in Miami. It's because they have set a standard that guys like Udonis Haslem, who are there forever, held everybody to. Eric Spoelstra, Pat Riley, holds everybody to that standard in Miami. And that's why it's lasted as long as it has. Russell Westbrook is someone who can really, truly build that foundation here in Sacramento.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Big game for Monday night, part of a doubleheader. A 7 o'clock start. Best team in the NFC right now, Tampa Bay at 5-1. Many felt the Detroit Lions just a week ago were the best team in the NFC, suffering a loss, of course, Sunday night to the Chiefs. So they now sit at 4-2. Matt and James, you're going to break it all down for you. talk about key matchups, certainly talk about storylines. James, you're right. We said it in the open. Lions and Bucks, just schedule maker, seems to have these teams playing together every year. A couple years ago where it was the playoff game, but Bucks playing very well right now. And these are two heavyweights going at it Monday night, huh?
Yeah, two heavyweights that are both banged up just on opposite sides of the field. So it's definitely going to be an interesting game. But, it's like I said a couple weeks ago on a crossover with Locked On Eagles. When these teams keep winning the division, they're going to keep facing each other every year. So it's developing these non-divisional rivalries because you're going to end up seeing the team the following year. But yeah, this is a huge one, and it could have serious implications down the line. Whoever wins this might be hosting the other in an NFC championship in January.
We want to thank all of you for making us your first listen, checking us out wherever you get your podcast. Check out Locked On Bucks on YouTube as well, on our YouTube channel as well. Yeah, storyline. Let's start, James, and I'll go same storyline as you, but I want you to expound a little bit on the offensive side with the Bucks and all the receivers. But on the defensive side, Lions are going to go into this game Monday night. And obviously, you and I are recording this way before this game is being played, but the secondary is just a major question mark for Detroit. Brian Branch, of course, suspended. Kirby Joseph, 1 minute Dan Campbell says he's going to try to play. The next minute Dan Campbell says, do we hold him out a couple of weeks and rest that sore knee? Avonte Maddox is likely going to be out. Terrion Arnold is out. DJ Reed is out. Cornerback and safety extremely thin right now, as Baker Mayfield, who many are calling an MVP candidate, is coming to town. And so you're going to have a lot of backup DBs for Detroit. And it sounds like a lot of backup wide receivers and skill position players for the Bucks, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that has been without Mike Evans for a couple of weeks. You get Godwin back for 2 games. Now he's back out again. You lost Jalen McMillan in the preseason because Teddy Bridgewater threw him a hospital ball. He's still wearing a neck brace. He's not expected back until December. And then the leader in the clubhouse for Offensive Rookie of the Year, Emeka Egbuka, does not play the second half against the San Francisco 49ers because of a hamstring injury. We haven't gotten an official word. He was supposed to get an MRI. We haven't gotten those results yet, but it's nearly impossible to suffer a hamstring injury in one game and then play in the following game. He is expected to miss time. So, you saw Baker Mayfield going up against Detroit with Cam Johnson, Tez Johnson, and Sterling Shepard, and still managing to get the job done. So the biggest story to me in this one is the potential return of Mike Evans. Bucky Irving and Chris Godwin have already been ruled out, but Mike Evans is in play for this game. And against that banged up secondary, you're going to put Mike Evans in a situation where he can dominate in the red zone, as he tends to do. And even beyond that, if he's out there, he's going to command more attention from a weakened secondary. And that's going to put players like Tez Johnson, Sterling Shepard, and Cam Johnson into plus matchups that they have shown that they can win when given the opportunity. So this is really kind of the game that Egbuka would have exploded in, and Lions fans, I'm sure, know the headaches that Egbuka can cause. But just having one of their top 4 guys out there on the field, if Evans is able to return, is really going to open things up for the rest of the offense.
And it's interesting on the Lions side. Yes, the secondary is banged up, and they love Amik Robertson. He's the one corner of the top 6 corners that they had in training camp. It's now down to 1. That's healthy, that they really like. So Amik can play in the slot. We know that, but on the outside, he's been good. And that's the saving grace right now. But Aleem McNeil coming back is a big deal. And there was some talk about him 2 weeks ago returning very, very early from the ACL. They've started his clock. Last week was about 50-50. Decided to keep him out of that Kansas City game, and they could have used him. But now this week, he's going to be out there on Monday night. And to get Aleem back as that anchor of your defensive front up front in the interior, alongside Aiden Hutchinson, to go with DJ Reader, who's somebody Coach Campbell has said he's played very well lately. Tyleik Williams, their first round pick's been fine there, but nothing like getting Aleem McNeil back and trying to get some interior pressure on Baker because, like we said, just like last year, the defense starting to get a little bit banged up in Detroit, but no excuses. They did not play well on Monday night.
Yeah, and that was, unfortunately, I wasn't able to see the Lions-Chiefs game. I always like to try to make sure that I'm watching the team that the Bucs are playing the following week. But from what I gathered, it was a lot of circumstances out of their control is the nice way that I'll put it. And then
you've been reading the internet.
I've seen clips. I've seen some clips. Jared Goff should have a receiving touchdown. I think that's pretty obvious. And I know Lions fans were upset about that, but there was a lot of self-inflicted wounds in that game. And that's a big concern, at least on the Buccaneers side, is these are things that the Lions are going to be able to clean up. These are things that Dan Campbell is going to make it a point that they don't make that mistake again. And facing a Lions team coming off of a loss is a far more difficult task than facing a Lions team that's coming off of a win, because they are going to, really put a focus on the things that went wrong and make sure that they do not repeat those mistakes a second week in a row.
What's up with your guys? Everybody knew they were a good team. Okay. But 5-1 and just these close games they're playing almost every week, but they're winning them. And, Baker, the scrambling ability, and he's taking it to another level this year. You mentioned all the injuries to the receivers, yet here they're at 5-1. What do you think is the reason?
Baker. I mean, really, he is the MVP of the NFL right now because of what he's been able to do while missing what he's missing. Because on top of the receiver issues, they've lost Kalijah Kancey for the year. They've had Jamel Dean and Zion McCollum and Benjamin Morrison miss games. They still don't have their starting right tackle. They've lost their starting right guard for the season. They just keep finding ways to win football games. And that's what good football teams do, right? It doesn't matter the obstacles. It doesn't matter, what gets in their way. They find ways to win, and they're figuring it out as they go. And as they continue to get healthy, they're just going to keep getting stronger. But you can't understate the impact that Baker has had on this team, just with his mentality, his leadership. And I started calling him a Goonie a couple of weeks ago because he never says die. And that's what Buck fans love about him.
It's amazing. No one ever says slide to this guy, right? They're just, he's a pinball out there. It's unbelievable.
He's the quarterback version of Cam Scatterbo.
Yeah, totally. Quickly though, Bucks are giving up a lot of points. Scoring defense, they're obviously, you get two of the top 6 scoring offenses in the league. Lions are second, Tampa 6, but you guys are giving up over 25 a game, right? How's the defense been?
The defense is getting better each week, and it's been a lot of maneuvering because of the injury situations, right? But you've had Greg Gaines and Elijah Roberts step up big time over the last couple of weeks in Kalijah Kancey's absence. You lose Jamel Dean and Benjamin Morrison for one game, and then the next game you lose Zion McCollum, but you get Jamel Dean back. So if you get McCollum or Morrison back in this game and you have two of your basically starting outside corners, that's going to tend to open things up quite a bit for what Todd Bowles likes to do. He's going to get to send more blitzes. He's going to get to have more exotic coverages and schemes because he has guys out there that can run the defense that he wants to run. So in spite of the injuries on both sides of the ball, they just keep, continuing to put themselves in situations where they can win games. And unlike the last couple of years, they're actually finishing those games off with wins instead of one-score losses.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
It's Bengals, it's Steelers, it's Thursday night football. A must-win for the Bengals, and the Steelers, well, they could deliver a knockout blow in the AFC North.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Chris, this to me, it doesn't get much bigger on both ends of the spectrum here, because the Bengals are clinging to some hopes that Joe Flacco is going to keep them afloat, and the Steelers, well, their 41-year-olds got them more than afloat, has them in first place. What's the biggest story right now in your neck of the woods here with Pittsburgh at 4-1?
Well, the recent update would be that, particularly just for this game, Deshaun Elliott, safety for the starting strong safety for the Steelers, did not travel with the team Wednesday and is questionable with a personal designation, telling you there's some personal issue going on. We know that he did not practice as well, so like there's a questionable tag there. That's a little bit of a concern because Deshaun Elliott's a big part of the secondary. He missed their second and third games due to injury. And then when he returned with against the Vikings was a huge part of the defense. So you certainly hope everything's okay there and it's nothing serious. But right now, you mentioned it as being a big game for the Bengals. This is also a big game for the Steelers because even though if they lose this game, they're 4-2 and they're still atop the division. Really, the whole idea is that the Steelers last year, they were 10-3. They were right in the cusp of they were in the mix for winning the division, and then they fell off a cliff. And right now, I think there's just a sense that, hey, we want to put our foot on the necks of the Ravens and the rest of the division as much as possible while we have the chance to, because the Ravens had played a lot of their tough games. They played the Chiefs, they played the Lions, they played the Bills. The Steelers got both the Lions and the Bills coming up still. They still have to play the Packers. They still have to play the Ravens both times. They have to play the Browns in Cleveland, where they haven't won since 2021. So there's a lot of games on their schedule still that aren't like, oh yeah, chalk those up as wins types of games, even if the Steelers keep moving on an upward trajectory the way they have the last few weeks. So I think the thing is, while the Bengals are trying to stay in it, the Steelers are trying to maintain their momentum, because if they win on Thursday tonight, they advance to 5-1. The Ravens will be 1-5. The Ravens are their most foreseeable competition. Well, only team with really a quarterback right now when you look at the rest of the AFC North. And that would give them a fair cushion to push the Ravens to say, like, hey, you either need to sweep us and you lose a couple of games, or you need to, or if we beat you one time, you're basically going to need to win outside of your games to have a real shot at winning the division.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting to me is, like, from a Bengals perspective, and I said this before the Green Bay game, they acquired Joe Flacco. You kind of look at things, especially with the short week. It's like, all right, 2 games, 4 days, 5 days, really, if you count travel, all those things. It's which game's more important. And even before the Packers game, I'm like, you got to get Thursday night. Probably losing in Green Bay at Lambeau 5 days after Joe Flacco gets traded for, all those things. We have to win this game. And so the Bengals, they better come out with urgency. They better come out kitchen sink style, throwing everything they can at the Steelers. And yet on the other side of it, yeah, if you can go up 4 games on the Ravens, if you're the Steelers and you can go to 5-1 and the Ravens are on their bye at 1-5, beat up, battered. I mean, you couldn't have drawn up from a standings perspective a better scenario through 6 weeks for the Steelers. And they're right there. So yeah, I totally get their mindset, and that being the mindset and that being the theme this week. The Bengals have to counteract that from the jump. And they have to, like, if there's any hope of them staying afloat without Joe Burrow, any hope of them picking up the pieces and making this work with Joe Flacco and being not just a team that can now move the ball a little bit on offense, but a competitive team that's going to win games, this is a game you have to win. Division opponent, a Steelers team that's playing well thus far. But if you do win and you get to 3-4 and you move to 2-0 in the AFC North, you have another matchup with Pittsburgh a month from Thursday. Like, there's all these reasons why you could convince yourself you're still very much in it.
Yep.
If you lose, you fall to 2-5, and it's really unrealistic to feel that way. So it's wild how opposite sides of the spectrum are still leading to the same thing, which should be desperation and desire to get a win, because it would be huge for both teams.
It would be. It's still, I mean, AFC North football is still big even when there's as many injuries in this division as there are. Lamar Jackson, still isn't back. Joe Burrow basically done for the year. There's and all the other injuries that have hit up on these teams. But still, like you said, like these are big games because the AFC. I think it's not just the AFC North that's open. It really looks like the entire AFC is open right now. The Bills are not the unstoppable Bills that they were that they looked like they could be this year. They're 4-2 coming off of 2 straight losses. The Patriots actually are technically in first place in the AFC East right now. The Colts are the team atop the AFC with a 5-1 record. The Chiefs are 3-3. Like there is a door that is open right now where if you can be the team that gets hot and this is just your year, maybe you can make something. Maybe it's finally like Joe Burrow and Tom Brady are the only AFC quarterbacks that can say that they've beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs, which is insane to say because he's been in the playoffs for like 9 or however many years he's been in the league. It's ridiculous. Yes. So I'm right with you. Like there is a sense of urgency on both sides of these teams, whereas the Bengals are trying to win to stay in it. The Steelers are trying to get ahead because they know, hey, this is our chance to get up and try to get into the mix with all these top teams when there's no clear superstar juggernaut team in the AFC total right now.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if the Steelers, if they continue to win games, at some point you just have to put them there, right? And so that's what they're trying to do, regardless of how it is or how it looks or, Aaron Rodgers or this, that. The record is your record.
Yep.
And so it, to me, from my view from here in Cincinnati, it's been pretty drama free. It's been about football and it's working out. They're playing at a really high level, and we could get into the matchups coming up in a bit. But for this Bengals team, I know their mindset. And there's a lot of people locked on Bengals watchers and listeners right now that are like, just tank. Just tank. They didn't like the Flacco deal, even though clearly Mike Tomlin didn't like it either. Why? Because it makes the Bengals better. He was right. Like Mike Tomlin was right. I don't blame him for feeling that way. Mm-hmm. It clearly makes the Bengals better and gives them a chance. Now, the Bengals have to take advantage of that chance. And this offense needs to find a way. They've been outscored, Chris, 79-9 in the first half of their last 4 games.
Jeez.
It's unbelievable. Think about that. So you're basically 20-3. Less than that, 20-2.5.
That's nuts.
On average at halftime. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. So can Joe Flacco in this offense get going early against the Steelers? That's a huge, huge factor when it comes to who's going to win the game on Thursday night.
I think so too, and that's something we'll talk about the next segment. Is starts getting go early, even though it's Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco is not a bum. Like he's. You could say he's chopped. You could say he's washed. You could use all the terminologies for older players in the NFL, but he still knows how to read a defense, sling a football, and get it to playmakers. And the Bengals got the best 1-2 punch at wide receiver in football. So that's a heck of a person to have in a pinch, is a guy who can just get the ball out, read a defense, and especially throw a deep ball to give one of those 2 superstars a chance to make a play. And to me, that's going to be a big story in this game.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however I want to bet in the moment. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Listen, yes, I've said this multiple times this week, as you can imagine, but Lane Kiffin admitted that they practice on the Georgia Bulldogs during the bye week 2 days. Just straight up. Yeah, before they practiced for Georgia on the bye week. Mm-hmm. So I view that coach speak like U.S. military technology. You only know about 20% of what's actually out there.
Sure.
So if he's talking about 2 days, they probably did it 5. And that explains a lot of what they put in. If you looked at the offense, we had Jake Crane from Crane & Company on my podcast early in the week, and he's like, this is the most vanilla offense that Lane Kiffin has ever put out there. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to flush it, move on. They're obviously looking for the Georgia Bulldogs because I think Lane knows that after what happened in Oxford a year ago, he is going to get Georgia's best. And I am thankful as an Ole Miss fan that this game is not at night. If this game was at night, that's probably worth 14 points in this ball game because of Kirby being really jacked up and all of that. I think in the daytime, better shot. Georgia is going to be good because they are still one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the Southeastern Conference and one of the best teams in America. So I am under no illusion that Ole Miss is just going to walk in and win that game at all. But Ole Miss is talented enough to where if they get just a couple of breaks, they don't have to play well, but they do need some help, a little bit of help. And if they get that help, which Georgia has been giving to teams in the first half of games, they've
tried.
Yeah. If Ole Miss gets that help, instead of a 10-0 game like you saw at Auburn, it could be 21-0 because the Ole Miss offense can do some of the stuff that Tennessee did with the deep passes, but they can also run the ball and do some of the stuff that Auburn was effective with in that game in the first half. Now, I am under no illusions. Again, this is Kirby Smart we're dealing with. It's going to get taken care of, and he's amped up for this game. But I think Daquan Wright and Caden Lee in the middle of the field are going to be important in this game. In pass coverage, Georgia's linebackers, when they're coming up and playing the run, they're the best in college football, but they can be taken advantage of whenever they're matched up one-on-one with a slot receiver like Caden Lee, just like Ole Miss did a year ago.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to try to do that, but with Trinidad Chambliss being 5'10", 5'11", you're going to see those tall trees raise their hands up to where the middle of the field might get taken away. But I think Daquan Wright and Caden Lee are the 2 players to watch in this football game.
Yeah, what you saw in the second half against Jackson Arnold, who we know is a carbon copy of Trinidad Chambliss.
Exactly the same.
What you saw in the second half was a lot of spy, sometimes even double spy, where you had multiple linebackers watching. We know Auburn had 15 total yards of offense in the second half. Late in the fourth quarter, they had negative 5 yards rushing in the second half. It worked really well. Obviously, 130 yards rushing in the first half for Auburn. They got those mistakes cleaned up. I do think you're going to see some spy from guys like CJ Allen, because obviously you gotta be wary. You can't just be wary of the underneath passing game. You get your eyes moving side to side in some of these formations and route combinations that Lane likes to run, and all of a sudden that's where the quarterback's going to hit you. Guys are going to have to stay in their rush lanes. Linebackers are going to have to be home. The safeties are probably going to have to come down and help with some of that underneath stuff so that the linebackers can be freed up to keep their eye on the quarterback. I'm curious on your end. And so I do agree. I think CJ Allen, Raylan Wilson, Justin Williams, the true sophomore, Chris Cole, those guys are going to have a big role in the outcome of this game defensively. People look at the secondary and say the secondary's had issues this year. It's really the pass rush that's had issues this year. And it's hard to rush a guy like Chambliss anyway, because he's so elusive and he's so quick and they do so many design runs. And so you can't just pin your ears back and come after him. And so it's tough to get a pass rush anyway. The secondary has been okay. I think the linebackers are going to be really important in this game. I'm curious from your perspective, from an Ole Miss side, about that Ole Miss defensive front. Georgia's shown as a huge upgrade from last year's team, where Georgia finished 14th in the SEC in rushing, outside the top 100 nationally in rushing. I'm talking about the Georgia Bulldogs, finished outside the top 100 nationally in rushing last year. They've increased their rushing yards per game output by over 90 yards, Stephen, per game this year. The really emphasis on running football. Chauncey Bowens, Nate Frazier have been really good out of the backfield. We know Ole Miss lost a ton on that defensive front from last year.
All of them.
All of it. And so, but now it's not last year anymore. We're 6 games in. And so from your perspective, how's that group going to stack up against a banged up offensive line, but an offensive line that's been creating a lot of holes in the run game? 275 on the ground against Alabama in the last, in the last marquee home game that Georgia had. How's that Ole Miss defensive front going to hold up?
Well, the good news for Ole Miss fans is their 2 pups, no pun intended, are starting to grow up. with Kamarion Franklin and William Eccles, 2 5-star players that are true sophomores that are starting this year. Cam Franklin had a sack and a half against Washington State. He was one of the few players that actually played pretty well. William Eccles is back-to-back dominant sacks of getting pass rush and as well. And then Xavier Harris, he's 350 pounds. You know about Xavier Harris. He's been at Ole Miss, it feels like 10 years. So it depends on if Pete Golding, and I genuinely believe he's been playing odd fronts this year because he didn't have to worry about the running game, the physicality of it. LSU, they didn't stick with it. Tulane, even Washington State, you didn't have to worry about that. You could rush 3 and drop 8 and be very vanilla on the back end. You're not going to be able to do that against Georgia because Georgia and Mike Bola will absolutely run you out of an 8-man coverage. So I'm expecting some even fronts, maybe even some odd 5-man fronts for the Ole Miss Rebels, where they're going with 2 linemen, Prince Will Amonmiel, and I should
there
say.
It is. Yeah,
there
easy for you to say.
Yes. Lining up, playing a little bit of linebacker, stand-up defensive end, but they're trying to get Gunnar Stockton into 2nd and 8. They're trying to avoid the 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, first down, 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, first down. Because if that happens, you're cooked. Yeah. So they need to figure out a way to stop the running game and force 2nd and 3rd down and long yardage. And if they can do that, then they can NASCAR package it a little bit, and they can get after Gunnar Stockton because they have played the cream of the cream of rushing quarterbacks in the SEC. That is something that they have seen this year. So I think they'll be able to handle Gunnar Stockton. He's a little bit different, but he's not Taylon Green as far as somebody that can just outrun you. I'm curious to see what it looks like. I'm more concerned, honestly, about the running backs. I'm not the linebackers and against the Georgia running backs. I think you're going to see some screens in this game. I think Bobo's going to get into his bag a little bit. I think Bell's going to be running some end arounds. They're going to mess with the eyes of the linebackers in order to get those short yardage games. And the linebackers that Ole Miss has, TJ Daugherty, Jaden Yates, Taj Chambers, those guys, this is going to be two of the three's biggest game that they've ever played in front of. And I guess Jaden Yates played at Ohio Stadium, so that probably counts a little bit towards that. But in this game, this is going to be huge. College game day, the whole 9 yards. There's a freak out factor with this defense. And if they can avoid the bust, because Ole Miss's problem in run defense, when you look at the stats, it's like, man, they're giving up 150 yards a game. That doesn't tell the whole story. For 95% of the game, they're giving up 2 and 3 yards per carry, but they give up 2 or 3 explosive plays a game that is skewing that. If they cannot give up explosives against the Georgia Bulldogs, they're going to be fine. And if you stop Georgia's running game, Ole Miss is going to win this game. But the problem is stopping Georgia's running game.
Yeah. If you score more points than the other team, you're going to win almost every time. Yeah.
You just
got to score more points.
You just got to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. The last time Ole Miss won it in Athens was 1996. Now they don't play every year. But it's been a minute.
Yeah.
It's been a minute.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
The Patriots are good, the Titans are bad, but what this game is about is Mike Vrabel's revenge.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How how in the world is there any other outcome here than Mike Vrabel absolutely slapping the Titans around this weekend?
I mean, that's the story, right? You mentioned it at the top, man. Mike Vrabel returning to Tennessee, and just can they handle all the emotions? Can Vrabel handle his emotions? The team handle their emotions? Vrabel, speaking to the media on Wednesday, said, this isn't going to be a win-one for the Gipper here. Okay, this is not going to be an emotional thing. There's interesting, there's important. This might be interesting, but really, is it important? All those lines that I'm sure you've heard before, Tyler, during his time in Tennessee. But the other part of this game, too, beyond just the Mike Vrabel part and those emotions, is that this is the third straight road game for the Patriots, which is a tremendous challenge no matter who you're playing at the NFL level. And, of course, they right now sit atop the AFC East for the first time in 2021. So a lot of emotions, a lot of expectations, a lot of things to deal with on Sunday for the Pats.
Yeah, and the Titans are actually just coming off a 3-game road stretch of their own where they went to Houston and then Arizona and then Vegas. So coming home, there's got to be some sort of relief there. Obviously, we could talk about Mike Vrabel and his revenge, but the Titans have a lot on their plate when it comes to coaching. If Patriots fans weren't paying attention or didn't hear about it, the Titans fired Brian Callahan this week. They're going with Mike McCoy, former San Diego Chargers. Yeah, that's how long ago it was, folks. They were the San Diego Chargers when Mike McCoy was their head coach. But Mike McCoy taking over as the interim head coach. Bill Callahan, Brian Callahan's dad, the offensive line coach, also went with him, but everything else is relatively the same. And outside of the Mike Vrabel revenge factor, like you were saying for the Titans, it's all about, can Mike McCoy get more out of this team? Again, coming off the road, 3 straight games, coming back home. And quite honestly, I don't know how you feel about this, Nick, but to me, it feels like all of the pressure is now on the Patriots. The Titans have admitted that their season is in the gutter. They fired their coach. They're not expected to win. They're 5.5-point underdogs at home. I think it might even be 6.5 at this point now. All of the pressure is on New England to beat a team that they should be. And listen, Mike Vrabel could say it's not a win-one for the Gipper, but we know how sports work. And we know that if they win this game, and I, would think that they would, that the Patriots players are going to go crazy and be happy for Mike Vrabel. And no matter what Vrabel says publicly, he's going to have a little bit of happiness internally as well.
Oh, I agree with you across the board, Tyler. I mean, you look at this game, the Patriots have all the pressure. There's literally no pressure on Tennessee. The world expects them to not be good. They haven't been very good. As you say, they said goodbye to Brian Callahan on Monday, and it can't get worse, right? I mean, Brian Callahan, to me, was one of, if not the worst head coaches in football. He didn't know simple rules, let alone clock management and timeout usage and all the things that you should know as a head coach. It was a disaster for him in Tennessee. So, I mean, Mike Vrabel has as many wins in New England as Callahan had with Tennessee. And it's been 6 weeks in New England for Mike Vrabel. So it really can't be any worse. Yeah. For the Tennessee Titans. So I agree with you on that accord. And I also think there's some mounting pressure on Drake May. Drake May right now, honestly, is playing MVP level football. I mean, he's one of, if you look at the analytics and the stats and all that, and just the eye test, he's literally been one of the top 6 or 7 quarterbacks in football unequivocally through the first 6 weeks. But as you continue to move forward this season, and it's all on him with no run game so far, you wonder, is there going to be a point where he slips up because it's human nature and you can't always be as good as he's been unless you're a top 2 or 3 guy at that position. So I also think there's some mounting pressure on Drake May to continue to make this offense work pretty much all on his own out there.
Well, speaking of quarterbacks, Cam Ward is obviously had a struggle to start the season statistically. I would understand if Patriots fans are looking at Cam Ward's stats and going, man, this guy's terrible. But there's so much more context there. Like, they just fired the head coach because, quite frankly, he was trying to make Cam Ward play his system. And Nick, as you know, the test of a good head coach is molding what you're doing to what's best for your players. And I would say that was one of Callahan's, outside of the game management stuff, which is funny because he's like the anti-Vrabel. Offensive guy, scheme guy, not a CEO leader type, but didn't know the rules. Like, it was so bad when Vrabel Vrabel is making rules with the competition committee. He's so locked in to things like he could find any loophole possible. So it was like a total 180 there for what you were looking for from the coach. But for Cam Ward, the Titans have to help him more. They have to get him on the move. They have to do more play action. They had a season low play action percentage rate last week against the Raiders. It made no sense at all. They got to do what he does best. Let him use his mobility. He's not Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen by any means, but he's best when he's outside the pocket, can read the field, uses spatial awareness, do those sorts of things. And the Titans simply haven't done that stuff enough. So helping Cam Ward, like getting the best out of Drake May, has been one of the, in my opinion, one of the biggest feathers in Mike Vrabel's cap. I was uncertain about whether Mike Vrabel could be the best head coach possible for a young quarterback in need of development. But along with Josh McDaniels and the offensive staff, I think Vrabel's done a great job of getting Drake May to the best football that we've seen from him in his young career. The Titans need to hope that Mike McCoy could start helping Cam Ward get back on track, and I think a lot of that starts with doing things that Cam Ward is more comfortable with.
Yeah, if people are watching the video, I'm smiling as Tyler's talking because I actually think Patriots fans are the fans that will completely understand everything you just said about Cam Ward because it's almost a carbon copy of what happened with Drake May last year in his rookie season, right? The offensive line issues, I would say the Patriots' offensive line last year was worse than Tennessee's offensive line is this year, but the lack of weapons and trying to get Drake May to move out of the pocket and utilize his athleticism, which Alex Van Pelt didn't do a ton of last year. And so a lot of the things that you just said, I think match up with Drake May in 2024. And now you see that step in development, as you just mentioned. And it's been huge. Josh McDaniels has been huge so far, trying to fit the offense around him. Interestingly enough, you mentioned play action. Not a lot of play action last week. I actually thought Josh McDaniels walked into the game against the Saints last weekend on a heater. I thought he was doing a really good job. But in the second half against the Saints, I thought he was too predictable. The offense lacked some creativity. They ran the football on first down 5 straight times. The final 5 first downs of that game, they were run plays, and hardly any of them worked. They lost yardage on most of them. So I'm interested to see how Josh McDaniels kind of pivots from last week's second half to this Tennessee defense, which obviously I'm sure a guy we'll talk about an awful lot throughout this episode is Jeffrey Simmons. How do you account for him? How do you account for some of these other players on that defensive line? It's going to be an interesting thing after what happened last week.